Many believers assume obedience is primarily a matter of knowing the truth and wanting to follow God. So when they encounter an area of life that refuses to shift, even after prayer and scripture and sincere effort, they conclude that there must be something wrong with them. Scripture does not diagnose the problem that way. It introduces a different category entirely, and it's called law. When we hear the word law, we almost always think of the 10 Commandments, but Scripture itself uses the word more broadly and more precisely. In Romans 7, verses 21 through 23, Paul says, "So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being, but I see another law at work in my members, waging war against the law of my mind." Paul is very careful here. He does not say he lacks desire. He does not say that he lacks understanding. He explicitly says he delights in God's law and he even agrees with it. And yet there's something else that's operating. Paul calls that something else a law because of how it behaves. It's internal. It activates without a conscious permission. It exerts force under pressure. It overrides intention. And that tells us something essential about how Scripture defines law. Biblically, a law is not first identified by who authored it. It is identified by what governs when pressure removes choice. Paul reinforces this definition elsewhere. In Galatians 5:17, he says, "The desires of the flesh are against the spirit, to keep you from doing the things you want to do." Again, notice the language. You want to do one thing, and something else prevents it. That prevention is not ignorance. It is governance. And in Colossians 2:20 through 23, Paul names an even clearer category. Why do you submit to regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, according to human precepts and teachings. He calls these self-made regulations. They are not given by God. They're still functioning like a law. So Scripture itself establishes this category. A law is whatever governs behavior automatically, especially under pressure. This is the category that vows occupy. So now we need to slow down and just read Numbers 30, verse 2 carefully. "When a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth." That phrase, bind himself, is not metaphorical. In Hebrew, it is a binding. It's the nefesh, the soul, the part of a person that carries life, desire, movement, and direction. So a vow, neder, is not simply a promise, but a future behavior. And it is a binding placement on the soul itself. So this is why Scripture treats vow with seriousness. Ecclesiastes 5 does not say, "Be careful how you feel." It says, "It is better that you should not vow than you should vow and not pay." Why such weight? Because once a vow is made, it gains authority. It governs. The soul has placed itself under obligation. Now consider when a vow appears in Scripture. Jacob, he vows while fleeing for his life. Jephthah vows under the threat of war. Hannah vows in deep anguish and barrenness. And Jonah vows from confinement and fear. And across Scripture, the pattern is consistent. And God does not demand the vow. The human initiates it. And it appears when the future feels unsafe. Scripture is teaching us something beneath the stories. A vow forms when the soul tries to stabilize itself. Not through rebellion, through self-protection. This is a critical movement. A vow does not stay at the level of language because it binds the soul. It becomes governing logic. It establishes a rule the inner life obeys automatically. I must stay in control. I can't depend on anyone. I can't slow down. I cannot risk obedience here. These are not passing thoughts. They are internal laws. That is why Paul's language in Romans 7 is so precisely fitting. There's another law at work in the members. Not a belief problem, not a governance problem, But when pressure rises, the vow executes first. And this is why belief alone does not resolve issues. Now, Ecclesiastes makes sense. Scripture warns against vows because they compete with trust. And this is why Jesus does not refine vows, he removes them. Do not swear at all, let your yes be yes. Jesus is not offering speech advice. He's dismantling layered allegiance. The kingdom does not function alongside fear-based governance. Trust must be unconditioned to be trust. When someone cannot find victory, Scripture does not ask first, what do you believe? It asks, what law is operating here? Where the soul shifted allegiance, a vow was formed. Where a vow was formed, governance began. This is why effort can fail. You cannot out-effort law. Law must be dethroned. Story and vow dismantling is the work of removing authority from laws that God never gave. That is where movement begins. That is where freedom becomes possible.